The crowd chants a famous last name. Cameras sweep across a sea of red caps. On stage stands a former reality TV star, now President of the United States. But the story of this moment doesn't begin in the White House, or even in Manhattan's Golden Towers. It begins decades earlier, with a quiet, driven builder in Queens, Fred Trump. He never ran for office. He rarely chased cameras. Yet his apartments, his deals, and his money helped build what many see as America's richest political dynasty. In this episode, we'll uncover how Fred Trump made his fortune, how he used government programs and aggressive tactics to scale it, and how that wealth and mindset shaped Donald Trump and the political powerhouse the family later became. This is the story of the man behind the dynasty. Before Donald Trump, before the towers and casinos, there was a small wine village in Germany called Karlstadt. That's where the Trump story begins. Fred's father, Frederick Trump, left Karlstadt in the late 1800s, chasing opportunity in America. He didn't strike gold in the mines, but he did make money serving the miners, running restaurants and hotels in the Pacific Northwest and during the Klondike Gold Rush. He eventually returned to New York, married a woman from his hometown, and settled in Queens. That's where Fred Trump was born in 1905, in a German-speaking immigrant household shaped by hard work and caution. World War I changed everything. Anti-German feeling in the United States ran high. The family downplayed its German roots, leaned into being simply American, and focused quietly on business. As a boy, Fred watched his father buy and manage small properties in Queens. He saw that the real language of power in New York wasn't politics or speeches. It was buildings, rents, and land. Fred Trump wasn't just ambitious, he was early. While most teenagers were worrying about school, Fred was already out on building sites in Queens. By his late teens, he had started his own small company, putting up simple homes in outer borough neighborhoods. These weren't luxury mansions, they were solid, no-frills houses for working and middle-class families who wanted out of crowded tenements. Then came the Great Depression. Banks collapsed, construction slowed, and millions were out of work. For many builders, it was a death sentence. But Fred saw openings where others saw disaster. Land got cheaper, labor was available. If you could find financing and keep costs low, you could still build. And he did. Fred focused on efficiency, plain brick houses, standardized designs, tight budgets, and quick sales. He learned to squeeze every dollar, negotiate hard with suppliers, and move fast when opportunity appeared. The outer boroughs, Queens and Brooklyn, became his laboratory and his territory. Before he turned 30, Fred Trump had already built hundreds of homes and laid the foundation, literally, for the Trump family fortune. When World War II arrived, Fred Trump found his biggest customer yet, the US government. The war created a huge need for housing near shipyards, bases, and factories. Washington needed private builders who could work fast and cheap. Fred fit that description perfectly. He won contracts to build barracks and apartments for Navy workers and other war-related projects along the East Coast. These jobs were funded by federal money, paid on time, and done at scale. After the war, the demand didn't vanish. Millions of returning soldiers needed places to live, many using the GI Bill and FHA-backed mortgages. The government was pumping money into housing, and Fred Trump positioned himself right in the middle of that stream. He developed large apartment complexes in Brooklyn and Queens, like Shore Haven and Beach Haven. Thousands of units, similar designs built quickly and cheaply, financed with government-backed loans. He became, in effect, a mass producer of housing, using public programs to build a private empire. By mastering these systems, Fred didn't just survive wartime and post-war chaos, he grew rich from it. These projects created the steady rental income and rising property values that would support the Trump family for generations. Behind the image of the tough New York landlord stood something less glamorous but very powerful. Government programs turned into long-term family wealth. But Fred Trump's story also has a darker side. In the post-war years, his buildings mostly housed white, working and middle-class tenants. Black families often found Trump properties mysteriously full, or were told there were no vacancies when white applicants were accepted. Decades later, this pattern would become central to a major civil rights case against the Trump company, accusing it of racial discrimination in housing. Fred also drew attention in Washington. In the 1950s, a Senate committee looked into whether he had profited too much from government-backed housing projects. His methods, padding costs, taking advantage of loopholes, pushing the limits, earned him a reputation as a man who squeezed every possible dollar from public programs. Some saw him as a smart businessman who played by the rules as written. Others saw him as a government-backed profiteer. Then there was Steeplechase Park at Coney Island. Fred bought the famous amusement park, demolished it, and tried to redevelop the land. The plans sparked public anger, lawsuits, and political fights. In the end, even when his big redevelopment vision didn't fully materialize, he still walked away with a large payout. These battles showed the Trump style: aggressive, unapologetic, and ready to fight regulators and critics, a style his son would later take to the national stage. On paper, the family company was called Elizabeth Trump and Son, named after Fred's wife and their eldest son. In reality, Fred was firmly in charge. He ran the business from a modest office in Brooklyn, far from the glamour of Manhattan. His world was blueprints, rent rolls, and long rows of nearly identical brick buildings. Fred's style was strict and frugal. He checked costs obsessively, pushed contractors hard, and expected loyalty. He didn't chase headlines. He chased cash flow. Into this world stepped Donald Trump, one of Fred's 5 children. As a boy, Donald visited construction sites, watched his father negotiate, and saw how political connections, zoning boards, tax breaks, housing officials, could make or break a project. From Fred, he learned that success wasn't just about building, it was about influence. But Donald also saw the limits of his father's approach. Fred ruled Queens and Brooklyn, not Manhattan. The buildings were profitable, but not glamorous. There were no glittering towers, no celebrity tenants, no magazine covers. Donald wanted more: skyscrapers, luxury, fame. In 1971, Fred made a key move. He put Donald in charge as president of the company. With his father's assets behind him, buildings, cash flow, and access to credit, Donald would push the Trump name across the river and, eventually, onto the global stage. Fred Trump died in 1999, but by then, the foundation of a political dynasty was already in place. Over decades, Fred had quietly transferred wealth to his children. Loans, ownership stakes, trust funds, and assets moved at favorable valuations. His apartment complexes generated steady income. Land values in New York had risen sharply. By the time of his death, estimates of his fortune ran into the hundreds of millions of dollars. Donald Trump used this base like a launchpad. With his father's backing, he built and branded projects in Manhattan, Atlantic City, and beyond. He crafted a public image as a bold, self-made billionaire, starring in books and later on television with The Apprentice. The Trump name became a global brand, but that brand also became a political machine. Donald's fame, combined with money and media reach, turned into a powerful platform. In 2016, he rode that platform all the way to the White House, becoming the 45th President of the United States. The next generation followed. Ivanka Trump, Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, and son-in-law Jared Kushner took on visible roles in business and politics, advising the campaign and the administration, speaking at conventions, and shaping policy debates. The Trump orbit grew to include media allies, political donors, think tanks, and activists. What started as a family of Queens landlords had evolved into one of the wealthiest, most influential political families in modern American history. For years, Donald Trump promoted a simple story. He was a self-made billionaire who started with not much and built a huge empire through sheer talent and toughness. It's a powerful narrative, and it helped him connect with voters who admired that image. But when you look at Fred Trump's life, the picture changes. Donald didn't start from scratch. He started with massive advantages: access to capital, lines of credit, political relationships, and a network of properties built with the help of government programs. That doesn't erase Donald's own choices or risks, but it does show that the Trump dynasty rests on a deep foundation of inherited wealth and state-supported deals. The American dream version of the story is neat and inspiring. The real version is more complicated: an immigrant family using public policy, private deals, and aggressive tactics to climb into the ranks of America's richest. So, did Fred Trump build America's richest political dynasty? He never ran for office. He never held a cabinet post or stood on a debate stage. But he did something just as powerful. He created the financial engine, the business culture, and the network of influence that made the modern Trump family possible. From immigrant roots in Queens to vast housing complexes funded by government programs, Fred turned bricks and subsidies into long-term wealth. He trained Donald in the art of leverage, publicity, and political access, even if he never imagined his son in the Oval Office. When we talk about the Trump era in American politics, we're really looking at Fred Trump's shadow stretched across generations. Question for viewers: did Fred Trump simply play the American system well? Or did he quietly prove how deeply money and politics are intertwined in the United States?